Hello, and welcome to the How to Choose Happiness and Freedom Show. I'm your host, Lauren Foster, happiness teacher and founder of Be Happy First. As a certified life mastery consultant, masters of wisdom and meditation teacher, and primal health coach, I'm on a mission to help 1 million women learn to be happy and free on purpose, healthy, wealthy, and joyfully living life on your own terms. Happiness is a choice, and you can always choose to be happy first. Thanks so much for being here. Now on to today's episode. All right. Yay. I've almost lost sleep. I've been so excited and honored to have Erin Power with me. Erin, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, my pleasure, Lauren. It's
Yeah.
great to be here.
Yeah. So I'm a certified primal health coach, and Erin is a central figure at Primal Health Coach Institute, where I got my certification. So now, anytime you enter into any kind of world, the primal health world, or um, I don't know, tarot card reading, whatever, there are going to be a lot of different voices. So it's important to find people that you resonate with so that you've got like a touchstone. So when information gets confusing for me, I'm like, okay, what does Erin say about this? And I go look at her website and I go look at her stuff. And that gives me oh, okay. And then I did her 30-day metabolic reboot, which I highly recommend. And we'll share the links to that. And she just gave me so much clarity about things that I thought I knew and lots of new information that I didn't know. It was just a really, really great experience. So thank you, Erin, for being here. We're so honored.
My pleasure. Let's go. Let's do
Yeah,
this.
let's go. So first of all, tell us your story. I love your story about how you were in the fitness world and how you're really ripping apart fitness culture and demolishing things like no pain, no gain and yeah.
Oh, gosh, I could talk about this for hours, and I sometimes I do. So I apologize. I'm not gonna ramble too much, but I think that there's probably gonna be a little bit of maybe some recognition in this story with some people. But when I was in my 20s, everything was really easy. Like health came very easily to me, as I'm sure we all know. And that's because we're 20 and, we're still kids, right? Our bodies are still young. I was really embroiled in the fitness industry. It was a huge part of my identity. I was a trainer and a group fitness instructor, but also I was just literally addicted to it. And it was, I looking back now, it was vanity. It was purely for vanity purposes. I just wanted to be ripped. I just wanted to be shredded. I wanted to be muscular. I wanted to be all those things. It was important to me almost to the exclusion of everything else in my life, which I have a lot of regret for now. Looking back, now that I'm in my 40s, I feel like I kind of wasted those. But anyway, then I get into my 30s, my mid 30s, things started really not working anymore. Everything that I had been doing in terms of fitness and nutrition, just eating right and exercising, stopped working. And I was gaining abdominal fat. But more importantly to me, I was absolutely losing energy. My energy was nowhere to be found. I always say that I felt like I was checked out of life. And I have to remind you, I was doing literally everything right. Since I was a teenager, I've been into fitness, exercise, sports, nutrition, um, almost obsessively. Like I was never a junk food eater. I never drank big gulps. I never ate at McDonald's. I wasn't doing any of that standard the junk food diet, Western diet stuff. I was eating kind of we know as a standard American diet, the bodybuilder type of it. So lean protein, healthy whole grains, steamed vegetables, zero fat, no spices, there's no enjoyment of food allowed. Food is fuel. And long story short, I stopped working. And for me, when my energy tanked like that, I think I had an inner knowing that wasn't okay. I think sometimes when we get older, we think, oh, I'm just getting older. But I had some little voice inside of me that said, well, maybe this isn't meant my destiny. So I did go to my doctor, which is something I never did because I'm not a sick person. I never was a sick person. I was a healthy person. I went for my annual checkup, and she was going to usher me out of the room really quickly because I'm medically boring. And I said, well, actually, I don't know if you noticed, but I've gained like 30 pounds in the last year, all around my abdomen. But more importantly, I've got no energy. I crash at my desk. I can't stay awake ever. I'm having heart palpitations. I'm having all these symptoms. And she said, oh, that sounds a little bit strange. I'm going to send you for some blood tests. So she did. I got my blood test back. I was pre-diabetic, which doesn't mean anything in medical terms. It's like, oh, you're pre-diabetic. And I said, what does that mean? Oh, it doesn't really mean anything. It just means that like you're almost diabetic, but you're not. So don't worry. And I was like, I'm sorry, I reject this diagnosis. What do you mean pre-diabetic? So I didn't even know what that was. And I marched out of the doctor's office, and the doctor's office was in the mall. You always have these like little moments that you remember of your story. And I was in the mall stewing about this. And I was like, what do I know about diabetes? I mean, I know it's something that like sedentary overweight people get, and they have to inject insulin. I knew that. So I marched into the bookstore. This predates smartphones. I didn't have a smartphone in my pocket to Google. I went into the bookstore and I typed the word insulin into the kiosk in the bookstore to find a book about insulin or diabetes or something. And I found a book called The Last 15 by Dr. Joy Schulman. It's not a book about diabetes. It's a book about metabolism and how insulin is the central hormone in our metabolic function. And I only knew what metabolism was from the fitness industry. You know, you either had a fast one or a slow one. You wanted to speed yours up if yours was slow, and this would speed yours up and this would slow yours down. That's all I knew about metabolism. And this book was like talking about the biochemistry of metabolism. That was really interesting to me, but it taught me how the human body is meant to use fuel, which ultimately is what metabolism is. And that was the opening of my rabbit hole, which I've now been down for 11 years because I'm in my mid 40s and I'm aging in reverse. I have more energy than I know what to do with. My body composition just, that belly that I had went away, just kind of whittled away over time. And things continue to kind of be easy now, just because I got my body sort of back online. Okay. And I guess the empowering part of this story is that the body is very resilient, and especially metabolically. Like our bodies are amazing machines designed perfectly, as far as I'm concerned. We kind of put the wrong inputs in sometimes. We put the wrong inputs in, the body trusts us. It's like, well, I don't know, this person's doing this, so we're just over time, the body system they start to break down. But the great news, the empowering news is it will bounce back. It's designed perfectly. If we just change the inputs, we can rebound right back to that perfect optimal health that's really our birthright. Yay.
Yay, absolutely. Okay, so the way that you went about, so what was the big change? It was now it's time to talk about the grains and the industrial oils and the really nitty gritty basics of the primal lifestyle.
Yeah, the primal lifestyle, the ancestral health, paleo, whatever you want to call it, that was the next sort of part of my rabbit hole, because the first thing I did was understanding the metabolic system. Mm-hmm. In the first book I read, that book, The Last 15, talked predominantly about circadian biology. At least that's what I took from it. So there's a sort of a rhythm to the body that's attuned to the rising and the setting of the sun, which sounds wacky, but we're animals. We're part of nature, so that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So the first thing I did was change the timing of my meals, actually. And then when I started, I was now obsessed with this whole idea of like prediabetes, insulin resistance. How does this happen to a person like me? And that's when I stumbled across the ancestral paleo primal lifestyle, which at the time was, and still is, really leading the charge on tapping back into how the body is meant to take up and use food as fuel. Like, how are we designed? What's our biological evolutionary design? So first of all, you have to believe in evolution, which I do. That helps. And also, it's like, because when I had been doing everything right and still got sick, that made me really angry. I'm still angry about it to this day. It's like, that's frustrating. I did everything they told me to do and it didn't work. And then I said to myself, how did cavemen eat? I just had that thought. I didn't even know that the caveman diet was a thing. And that's when I stumbled across the paleo primal template. Mm-hmm. So the big element that comes in there, to your point, is I call it a food quality piece. The food quality piece is how I interpret paleo primal. A lot of people interpret it as a low insulin producing diet, or, which can be, but I don't really want to vilify insulin all the time. I don't think that's a good approach, but I do like the food quality piece, because here's the deal. If you're sort of harming your body a little bit every time you eat or every day, that's the input you're providing. You're providing an input to your body that says, things are bad right now. All we have access to, we're consuming this food that's a little bit harmful. We're doing it every single day. The body's going to respond immunogenically, so the immune system will respond to that. anytime you're causing the immune system to respond, like you're self-harming, right? We know what the immune system is meant to respond when we suffer an illness or an injury, but it's not really meant to respond when we're eating lunch. Like that's self-inflicted harm, and that was really wild to me. Some of the foods that we just eat consistently all day or every day trigger an immune response. It's like, why would I do that to myself? You know?
Yeah. Okay. So tell me the foods that do that. The foods
Yeah.
that trigger an immune response that keep your so did, in the metabolic reboot, you used an analogy of your autoimmune system as being like a rescue fire department, or or they're supposed to be hanging out waiting instead of working all the time. So tell us more
Right.
about that and how and specifically grains.
Okay. Yeah. So I actually like your firefighter reference, because I was always referring to them as a battalion of soldiers,
Ah,
but I like the firefighter one better because that's probably more real life that people can. I was in the army for a few years, so the soldier thing really resonates. But basically, military, paramilitary. Just imagine your immune system as some system in the body, a system in the body that's designed to protect you. Okay, designed, and it's obedient, super obedient, and it's binary. It's either like on or off. It doesn't think, it doesn't hem and haw. It's like if we get a signal, we're going.
we're going.
Right?
Mhm.
If that alarm bell rings in the fire hall, the fire truck's going. Doesn't matter if it's a false alarm, we gotta go, right? So that's really cool. We're really lucky. We're very fortunate to have the system in our body that takes care of us like that. That's so responsive. Just sole purpose is to take care of us. Wow. So let's talk about grains in this example. So first of all, understand that if you, let's say you roll your ankle, you injure yourself, the immune system's like, we got an injury, let's go. They get in the fire trucks, they go to the site of the injury, they start producing inflammatory response. And we know the heat, the swelling, the redness, whatever it is, the pain even, is all part of the healing process. Like that's the body setting us up to get better as quickly as possible. Same thing with an illness. You get a fever, you get whatever, lethargy, you lie in bed, you get better, whatever it might be. All of these symptoms that we feel, the inflammatory symptoms, are designed to encourage healing. So in that context, this immune response, this inflammatory response is awesome. It's awesome. It's like, yes, it's doing what it's supposed to do. That's the acute expression. It's meant to be the firefighters go out, they fight the fire, and they come back to the fire hall and they wait for the next fire. I love your firefighter analogy. It's so much better than soldiers. Oh.
Okay.
So they're waiting for the next fire. We want them to be in the fire hall waiting for the fire. We don't want them to be
Resting up.
out fighting fires every.
Right.
Yeah,
They're
right.
resting up. Maybe they're lifting some weights and getting ready, just but hanging out.
I I dated a firefighter briefly. They do a lot of that. They
Yeah.
make supper, they watch TV, whatever. They're waiting for fires.
Uh-huh.
So when we eat grains, okay, so I'm going to tell this story from the perspective of wheat, and I'm going to use gluten as the scapegoat because it's one that everybody knows, but then I'm going to kind of bring it back to all the grains, if that's just one way I like to tell it. So everybody knows that gluten is this thing that's bad. It's like, oh, gluten-free is a thing. A lot of people think it's fake. Oh, this gluten fad, whatever. But here's the deal. Here's what gluten is. Just as a sidebar, whenever I'm faced with some kind of like health fad or whatever trending topic, I just want to get to the facts. Like, what is this thing? What is human metabolism? How does it work biochemically? What is gluten? Like, what is it? Why are we talking about it? What even is it? So it's a protein inside the wheat plant. Now, what's its purpose? Why did the wheat plant evolve with gluten in it? Because plants evolve too. Why did wheat evolve with this thing in it, this gluten? People will say, sometimes you'll hear, oh, well, gluten makes bread dough stretchy. I was like, sorry, that's not why wheat evolved with gluten. That doesn't even make sense. We
Wheat
invented
doesn't
bread.
care.
That's not what wheat plant doesn't give a damn about our bread.
Right.
Okay, so that's not why gluten exists. Just through here. Gluten exists in the wheat plant to protect the wheat plant from predators. And so every living thing on planet Earth has some anti-predation defense. Cats have claws, horses have hooves, plants have chemical compounds in them. Gluten is this chemical compound that when it's consumed by a predator, it just irritates the gut of the predator. It doesn't kill the predator. It's not going to kill the predator. It's going to irritate the gut enough that the predator's like, that doesn't feel good. I'm not going to eat that anymore. And the plant survives. So the bison will nibble around the wheat plants in the field, in the range, theoretically, and not eat it unless it absolutely has to under some kind of starvation situation. But that's the whole purpose. Like gluten exists in the wheat plant to irritate the guts of predators so that it can survive and thrive. So now we eat this every day. We just eat it every day. We decided we're gonna domesticate this wild grass. We're gonna hybridize it. We're gonna make it a fast, cheap, and easy commodity crop. We're gonna mill it into flour. We're gonna make food-ish products out of it because our population is exploding. And yes, we can eat it. It's not inedible. It's not poisonous outright. So these grain-based foods have become staples of our diets. And so every single day, like for me, for example, when I was pre-diabetic, I was eating sandwiches probably twice a day, for sure for lunch, maybe even for supper. They were very healthy sandwiches. Oh my gosh, they were beautiful sandwiches, amazing homemade squirrely bread. Um, every day though, every day I'm having a little tiny bit of a gut irritant. So my gut was just always irritated. My immune system was always responding to it, just like, what's going on? The gut's irritated again. Oh, we got to go down there. So my firefighters are never in the building. They're always out fighting fires. Here's the one thing though. I didn't feel like my gut was irritated. I could not feel gut irritation. This is down regulation. If you do something enough, if you subject your body to something unpleasant often enough, it down regulates your sensitivity. And that's another miraculous aspect of the human body. I love the human body. It's such elegant technology.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, I don't know what's going on out there, but this animal keeps eating these harmful grains. We're just going to mellow this out for her so she can go on, continue on through life without being, sidetracked by this obvious assault that's happening every day. So I couldn't feel it had down regulated my sensitivity. And the analogy that I often use is when you walk into a party and somebody's wearing a strong perfume, and it's very overpowering, but 20 minutes later, you don't notice it anymore. And then if you were to leave the party and come back, you'd notice it again. That's down regulation, up regulation. The body's always just like doing that for us so we can deal with stuff. So even though I didn't feel like my guts were irritated, which would have been a really handy thing that would be really handy if I could have known that it was irritating me, but I didn't know because I downregulated it so much. Now if I eat wheat, I notice. I notice for sure.
Right.
So the grains, just to kind of circle back and kind of answer the question, these are immunogenic by design. And immunogenic means they cause the immune system to respond to them because they just irritate the gut enough to make it kind of alarming, to set that alarm off in the fire hall for the immune system. And that's undermining our birthright, our the homeostatic balance of health that we are born with. Like it's undermining that. We're inflicting harm on ourselves unwittingly, but daily, every day. And so I look at inflammatory foods like grains or the industrial oils and say, I don't want to harm myself. Above all else, my body doesn't deserve that. I've done enough shit to my body. I've honestly treated it like a piece of garbage for many decades when I was obsessed with fitness and vanity. I'm not going to do that anymore because I respect this machine. It doesn't deserve that. Plus, I want to be badass, awesomely healthy until I'm 120 years old. So I'm not going to inflict harm on my body. And it's become like a driving force for me. And it makes it very easy for me to make supportive food choices because I, to my core, do not wish to do harm to my body.
Okay, so the final line under that is that all of the grains, wheat especially with the gluten, but all of the grains have anti-nutrients that behave in the same way. And
Yes.
so, and Erin will always tell us that your immune system can take a fire every once in a while. So it's not like you have to give up bread for the rest of your life. But if you're doing it every day, then your immune system forgets what it's supposed to be doing. And this is why we are so plagued with autoimmune diseases. One of the reasons that we are so plagued with that. We have a lot of other really bad habits as a population, excessive sugar and all that stuff too. But the grains is a really big one that is just ingrained in our diet. So,
Great.
now give us the explanation of how a person becomes insulin resistant, because diabetes is again an epidemic that is not getting any attention at all. I wish that we paid as much attention to diabetes as we do to COVID-19, because it's killing way more people, and not going to get on that soapbox, but but I want your illustration of how insulin resistance happens, and
Mhm.
that's when you become diabetic, right? When your body is insulin resistant.
Yeah, I mean, so the insulin resistance thing is very nuanced, and I will tell you one of the pathways that that creates it, and it created it for me.
Mhm.
But I just feel like I should add a caveat that there's a lot of nuance in insulin resistance.
Mhm.
I think that I believe the approach that I take helps most people, but some people might have other biochemical uniquenesses that have triggered insulin resistance for them. So I just don't want to be super black and white about this. I just think that the body is really complex. But here's kind of how I articulate it in the context of how I suffer from it and how my clients, the people that I work with, are people just like me who have had the same experience. Like everything I was doing was working until it stopped working, and then it just, things got out of hand. And my clients aren't autoimmune sufferers per se. They're just, I call them fat, foggy, and fatigued
That's foggy.
because they're gaining weight in their abdomen, which doesn't make sense because they're doing everything right. They don't normally gain weight in their abdomen. What's going on? It's not a place where I normally gain weight. Like my body shape, I'm a stick. I don't have any, I'm not curvy. I don't have any, but I was gaining this big belly, and that wasn't congruent with like how my body would carry weight. Anyway, so fat, we got foggy, brain fog, like the brain doesn't work. That's the whole checked out of life feeling that I had. Like, why can't I get my mind into what I'm doing? Why I used to be a really productive, smart person. And the fatigue, like just inability to do anything, to stay awake, to get to the gym, to go for a walk. It's like, I just can't, I'm just so tired, right? So those three things, if anybody can resonate with that, then you're probably like me. You're probably insulin resistant like I was. So here's how it happened. Um, Insulin is the hormone that responds when fuel is present in the blood. Okay, so we've eaten food, it's broken down into its component fuel parts. And when the body senses that there's fuel in the blood, insulin deploys. Another very obedient body system. Insulin deploys from the pancreas. It deploys in kind. So if there's 1,000 fuel units in the blood, 1,000 insulin units will deploy to take up those fuel units. If there's 2,000, 2,000, so depending on the amount of fuel, that's how much insulin comes out. So insulin in a perfectly functioning system picks up the fuel and delivers it to the cell via an insulin receptor. So it kind of docks on the cell. Insulin releases the fuel into the cell. The cell takes the fuel and makes energy out of it. That's the most simplistic explanation for metabolism
Beautiful.
ever. Oh my God. By the way, metabolism is incredibly complex. I'm talking about one tiny part of it. So let's just really be clear about that. So one thing that I think is really interesting is that when we eat food, when we experience hunger in a perfect situation, let's say you're metabolically healthy and you experience hunger, it's coming from your cells. Your cells are like, we're running out of energy, fuel to make energy. They says to the brain, could you get this animal to go and get some more fuel? The brain's like, got you. Triggers a little hunger signal in the stomach. That's where you feel it, in the stomach, nowhere else, just belly. And you would go get fuel. You would consume food. It breaks down into fuel. Insulin takes up the fuel, delivers it to the cell. The cells are like, great, make some energy. And in a perfectly functioning system, like the way my body runs now, this all happens very quietly behind the scenes. Very quietly. I don't notice it. I notice hunger because you're supposed to notice hunger. And I notice it in my belly. And it's like, oh, I'm getting kind of hungry. You know what? I've got a meeting. And then after that, I have to run to the store. I think I'll pick up a nice steak and maybe I'll get some, beans. Like when I get hungry, it's not an emergency because it's just the cells are saying, hey, whenever you get a minute, we could use some more fuel. And I can go and do that. And it's never an emergency. I don't get hangry, but I sure used to. So, because that's one of the symptoms of insulin resistance is hangry. As soon as I hear from a client that they can't go without food, or they lose their minds, their hunger happens up here. That's when it's like, okay, we got to work on your insulin sensitivity. That's okay. So in a broken system, the way this kind of works is fuel is now present in the blood because we've eaten food, but maybe because we've been choosing the wrong types of fuel. So I call fuel like either fast fuel or slow fuel. I kind of break it down like that. If there's a lot of fast fuel in the blood, then like insulin has to respond fastly to go get it. Maybe we're just eating too often. Maybe we're eating when we're not even hungry because our personal trainer told us to eat every 2 to 3 hours. And I used to tell people to do that all the time. Don't even worry about, you shouldn't even, like, we used to tell people to eat before they were hungry. That was the whole idea about the every 2 to 3 hours thing, was eat before you're hungry so you don't get too hungry. And then if you get too hungry, you might overeat. So just eat before you're hungry. That's so messed up. Like, the hunger signal exists for a reason. Why are we trying to micromanage this anyway? Or maybe you're just overeating, eating too much. There's a lot of reasons why the excessive fuel ends up in the blood. So now we've got lots of fuel, so lots of insulin shows up in the blood to take it all up. That's the kind of bottom line. And this insulin's docking to the cells, and the cells are taking up the fuel. This is, by the way, breaking down over time. This doesn't happen in one day. This happens over time, where over time, insulin just kind of keeps harassing the cells, like, hey, I got some more fuel for you. I got fuel. And the cell's like, I don't need it. I didn't ask for it. Why are you feeding me? Go away. So it like locks the door on that insulin receptor. So like insulin's knocking, but the cell won't let it in. Insulin's like, no problem. I'm just going to take this fuel. We're going to go convert it to fat and store it on the body. You know what we're going to do? We're going to store it on the trunk, because that's a nice, easy place to keep it. Really convenient. You're going to store it away. And if we keep doing this, if we keep kind of like dumping fuel in the blood, and this fast fuel especially, then we just keep dumping insulin. And then it keeps harassing the cells. Eventually the cells lock the doors and throw away the keys. There's like, nope, no, this is, I'm being harassed by insulin. I'm really simplifying it. So when you're quite insulin resistant, like when I was insulin resistant, and I believe I became insulin resistant not from eating junk food again, it was from eating all the time. As I was grazing, I was just grazing because that's what I was told to do for gains. Right? So even the healthy food I was eating, chicken breast, carrot sticks with hummus, whatever, rice cakes with peanut butter, all of these healthy foods were bouncing off my cells and getting stored as fat, I could eat all steamed broccoli till the cows came home, bouncing off my cells and stored as fat. But now I'm like starving because my cell, there's nothing getting in there. So now you're hungry. So what do you do when you're hangry? You eat more. Like, I'm starving. I feel like I'm starving. So now I'm eating more. Now I'm creating this caloric surplus, right? So the fat gain does come from a caloric surplus, and that's how I actually gained all my fat. But my caloric surplus came from being really hungry, and that came from having insulin resistance, having my cells locked up. Because these cells, now that they've locked the door, they're asking for fuel, but the fuel can't get in because the door is locked. So what happens when the fuel can't get in is that you're increasing that fat storage around your midsection. So it's like insidious fat gain, just like creeps up out of nowhere. That's why in 1 year, I went back to my doctor and said, yo, I gained 30 pounds in 1 year after a lifetime of being lean. Like, what? That's not normal. Yeah. You have no energy because the cells don't have the fuel to make it. So there's my fatigue, there's my brain fog. And then it's the hangriness, the emergency hunger, because your cells are like, brain, we got nothing. You gotta go get some Skittles or some jelly beans or get a Danish from the bakery. Where like the cells are requesting the fast fuel. Give us the fast fuel because it's an emergency now. We have nothing to run on. So that's where your carbohydrate and sugar cravings and sweets cravings come from when you're pre-diabetic or insulin resistant, is because the cells are asking for sugar. So that's my sort of puppet show that explains it. And I think when I give this puppet show to a lot of my clients, they're like, oh my gosh, that is exactly my experience. Yeah. And I do want to just wrap up by saying that is an extreme simplification of one aspect of the very vast metabolic mechanisms of the body. And that's not everybody's experience for insulin resistance, and I don't want to vilify insulin, and I don't want to vilify carbohydrate. That's why I use very vague terms. Like, fuel comes in, it could be protein, it could be fat, it could be carbohydrate. It's the excess of fuel that causes an excess of insulin, and that causes the cells to become desensitized to insulin, which is a real problem.
So, but this brings us back around to one of your basics, which is solve for hunger. Now, And so this means, and tell me if I learned correctly, that when you're hungry, you eat a meal, and you emphasize protein, and you are friendly with fat, enough fat to make your food taste great, and you minimize carbs, which you've already done because you've eliminated grains. So it's suddenly a very easy and nice relationship with food, and again, it's not urgent. So did I get all of that right?
You nailed it. I'm so delighted. I'm so delighted that you learned that. Oh my gosh, yay.
Yes.
Because as a coach or as an educator, you're putting this information out there. You're telling you're kind of trying to explain it to people,
Yeah.
hoping that they'll get it. And so it makes me really happy that you got it like
Yes,
that. That's awesome.
I knew it would. I'm a teacher too, and I love it when people get it. And I want to be a good student, so that it's win-win. All right. So, one of the other really important things that I heard from you was that I knew. I'm like, oh, well, of course, is that we are trying to. We think we're smarter than our bodies, and we're like all of these hacks and all of these. Oh, and the if you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated, like what,
Oh,
like you're just calling your body an idiot that it doesn't know better than to send a thirst signal. Okay, so but now so say I'm a person who is addicted to sugar, and I have cravings for sugar. I can't really trust my body at this point because
right.
it's just responding to my past inputs. So how do I get to a point where my body knows to ask for what it really needs and not what I've taught it to need? That was a convoluted question, but you know what I'm
No,
asking.
I do know. Yeah. So it's interesting because the way you phrased that question was, so if I'm addicted to sugar, because there's so much nuance there, right? I have a
Mhm.
lot of clients who declare themselves addicted to sugar, and so like metabolically, when you're insulin resistant, it feels like you're addicted to sugar. It's because your cells are requesting that fast fuel. But then there's the whole like psychological, actual sweet tooth like sweets craving problem, which I think is similar but different issue.
Mhm.
But for a body that's calling out at the cellular level for sugar because it's like we're starving, give us the fuel. What you kind of have to do, and you kind of have to deprive the body of that. Listen, the body knows how to make the fuel it needs out of anything you eat. Sugar's just the easiest. Sugar's we've got like the preferential fuel. Maybe we've heard this. Carbohydrates the preferential fuel. Glucose is the preferential fuel. Preferential doesn't mean best. It just means easiest, right? That's the easiest fuel. The cells can just technically, when they're not broken, can just suck up the sugar, just go. But the cells can run on glucose that's converted from protein. So protein can be converted to glucose. The cells can run on fat via the mitochondria, the little machines inside the cells that convert fat to usable fuel. People who are running sugar and fast fuels, their mitochondria kind of go to sleep. It's like, wow, we don't need to, we're just going to shut these mitochondria down since this human's just eating carbohydrates, fast fuel all day. We don't even need to fire up the mitochondria. We'll just let them kind of go dormant. So we have to re-wake up the mitochondria. We have to re-wake up these body systems. And re-wake up isn't even a word, but what I really want to express is that the body knows exactly how to do this. It hasn't forgotten. What we have to do is provide an input to nudge the body to be like, oh yeah, I know how to convert protein to glucose. Oh, right, I know how to convert fat to fuel. I know how to run on ketones. The body knows how to do all this stuff. We just didn't let it. So it decided to kind of trust us. It
Right?
trusted us when we said, you're going to run on sugar. That's how it's going to be. Like, it's like, you're in charge, man. Like,
Whatever.
whatever you say.
Yeah.
So you kind of touched on it. A couple things that I do with my clients is the very first rule. My first rule is always answer hunger with a meal. And that's more psychological than metabolic because we've been taught to eat with the clock. We've been taught to eat every 2 to 3 hours or graze all day long, all this micromanagement around food timing. And we've disconnected from the actual biological hunger mechanism, which is designed to tell us when to eat, just like our thirst mechanism is designed to tell us when to drink. And you don't need an app on your phone to tell you when to drink water. Oh,
I love it.
anyway.
Mhm.
So that's the first thing. And that's a little bit, it's difficult for clients who are insulin resistant because they're always hungry. That's you're hungry, you're hangry. They're like, Erin, I'm always hungry. Like if I answer hunger with a meal, I'm going to be eating meals every two. Like I'm going to be eating a lot of food. I'm like, great. Here's eat simple rule number 2. Prioritize protein. When you feel hungry, eat protein. Try your best not to have it be a fast fuel. Carbohydrate is the fastest fuel. Carbs are not bad. They're not bad. I'm not here to say carbs are bad. I'm never going to say that. I'm not a keto coach. But they're fast. And the fastness of the fuel is part of the problem for an insulin resistant person. So I'm saying give your body a slow fuel and teach it to convert that slow fuel. Because it will. It'll be like, well, this is all we got. She gave us a hamburger patty. We were craving a Danish and she gave us a steak or something, right? I guess we better work with this. And it will bring that gluconeogenesis system back up online. It will wake up the mitochondria, say, wake up, you got to convert this fat to fuel. And the body will do it. Will it do it immediately? No. It takes a few days. Sometimes it can take up to 2 weeks. That's the whole carb flu, keto flu thing that people experience where their energy seems to tank. But you have to just kind of muscle through it. When you get to the other side of it, oh my gosh, you're liberated. It's liberating to not feel so just hangry, emergency hungry all the time. Over time, when you practice this enough, you get really good at it. You get good at what you practice. Over time, the body's like, don't worry. You know what? You're busy. You know what? You're so busy. Don't worry. I'm just going to go ahead and mobilize some fuel from storage. That's your fat. I'm going to go ahead and mobilize this. I can feed the cells. Erin, you're busy. Don't worry. Hunger quietens because the body is kind of, even when you do experience hunger, if you can't feed it right away, it's not a big deal. Your body's like, don't worry, whenever you get around to it. It's starting to figure out how to fuel itself, which is how we're designed. If you think in the terms of evolution, we had many periods of food scarcity. How would we be here today if we had to eat every 2 to 3 hours? By the way, how would we be here today if we had to drink half your body weight in ounces of water every day? Because we didn't even have access to that much water. When I think about this from the terms of evolution, everything just clarifies for me. And that's just my own personal sort of like, that's not everybody's thing. But for me, it's like, I'm an animal. Just like my horses are animals. My horses do not need me to micromanage their feeding. They will eat grass. They will drink water. They take care of themselves. They're not obese. They don't have diabetes. They don't have heart disease. They're really healthy. We're animals too. What's our biologically appropriate diet? Anyway, so there's diet, there's food timing, food relationship. It's very messed up culturally because we've been taught to micromanage feeding. And so one of my big crusades is like, stop micromanaging it. Trust, learn to listen, love, and trust that your body is an epically elegant machine and it knows exactly what it needs. If you kind of get out of its way, you will be amazed at how easy food is. You know, like our relationship with food is so tumultuous, right? Anyway.
It really is just full of guilt and full of angst and anxiety and I've been this way my entire life. I drive my family crazy with all of the different diets that I would be on, and I can't have this and I can't have that, and I'm very much enjoying these last 10 years of my life when I've learned that my body knows what it wants, and that good healthy food can be absolutely delicious. And so our relationship with our bodies and our relationship with food, this is my forte. This is where I teach that, and I can so picture this re-educating your body to ask for what it really needs, not just what you've taught it to think that it needs, can be just really like a making up with. And I'm sorry I've been bossing you around all these years, but now we're going to work together, and we're going to start to understand that you have to give us the campfire analogy for the slow burning and the fast burning fuel.
Yeah, well, so first of all, I love that you are teaching this as well, and because um like this idea of just respecting, like, listen, we're kind of the pilots of the body. We drive the body. We're in charge of the inputs, and the body trusts us when we micromanage those inputs. It's very trusting. And so we can just kind of quieten and listen to what the body's actually asking and provide the inputs it's asking for. That becomes a really beautiful relationship, and that's how we're designed. Um,
And how much
so the
fun.
campfire analogy, yeah.
Yeah.
I apologize if I think my internet's having a moment, so I
It,
apologize
it,
if I'm getting
it,
kind of
it's all
interrupted.
good.
Okay.
We're ready for the campfire analogy. I love this. I'm just going to keep this video and keep referring people to it. Oh, well, go listen to this part of this.
Yeah. So the campfire analogy is a new one for me that I borrowed from somewhere. I heard it before and I liked it because the analogy I had created and had been using was gasoline versus batteries. So this is to talk about fuel types because I don't want to vilify any I don't want to vilify fuel, but I want to just differentiate, right? So in the olden days, I would talk about batteries versus gasoline. And my thinking was batteries like cell batteries, like flashlight batteries, right?
Mhm, mhm.
For me, I was thinking about like the microphone that I wear to teach fitness classes runs on a battery pack. And if the battery dies, I have to now shout. And I don't want to do that. I want to wear my microphone, right? So cell batteries. But now we have our telephone. We think about batteries, we think about our cell phone. And it's like, well, I can just plug it in. It's not a big deal.
What's the big
But
deal?
yeah, so the battery and gasoline analogy kind of changed for me over the years. It doesn't really land, but the campfire one does. So just to kind of close the loop on that, gasoline is a slow burning, reliable fuel. You fill the tank, you draw from the tank, you draw from the tank, you draw from the tank. The needle slowly moves. You can see that the needle is going toward east. So you fill the tank back up. You never really run out because you're always just stopping at the gas station and filling the tank. That's your slow fuel. That for me is protein and fat predominantly, and high fiber fruits and veggies would also be in the gasoline category.
Hmm.
Then our fast fuels, the portable, fast, cheap, easy batteries, cell batteries.
Hmm.
That's your fast burning, starchy carbohydrates, sort of grain based, junky carbs. Like they're fast. They deliver sugar into the bloodstream quickly. It's like boom, there's your fuel, but then it's gone. Like it's not reliable. The batteries die, they die. Then you're looking for more batteries, right?
Hmm.
So that was the battery gasoline analogy.
Right.
So the campfire analogy that I now am gravitating toward, although I still like my batteries and gasoline one, but
Batteries and gas is a good one too.
yeah. Um, there's two campfires. Okay, so you're out camping. It's chilly. Maybe it's fall, spring camping. It's cold. You
Cool.
need a fire to keep you warm, right?
Hmm.
So you have the choice of two fires. The first fire is made with tiny little sticks, twigs, newspaper, little bits of garbage, and dried leaves that you just kind of scramble up and you rake it all up into a pile and you light it on fire and it burns and then it starts to burns quickly and then it's like, ooh, you gotta get some more sticks, get some more newspaper, more leaves. You're just kind of always tending to this fire because it burns and dies and burns and dies so
Hmm.
quickly. There's nothing there to establish the flame. You gotta keep feeding it, feeding it, feeding it, feeding it. It's a kind of a fussy fire. It's like kind of a pain in the butt. If you want to really stay warm around that fire, you're gonna have to work all night long to keep it going. The other fire is made out of giant birch logs. So you put the birch log on the fire, it burns for hours, puts out a lot of heat. You can sit around that fire and relax and tell stories and look around, love life, enjoy life. Every now and then you got to get up and throw another birch log on the fire, but you're doing this every once in a while. And
Right.
the fire doesn't die. The fire is still warm because birchwood throws a lot of heat. That's why I chose birch specifically because it's a very good firewood. It throws a lot of heat. So you're still getting warmth from the fire. You just go fetch another log and put it on there, and the fire will sort of take it up and use that birchwood when it needs to. And so you get to just sort of enjoy life rather than having to tend to a fussy little sparky fire.
Yeah. And guys, this is such a beautiful way to live where you have a two or three meals a day, sometimes two, sometimes three, some according to your activity, according to how you feel, according to what your body wants. And suddenly your life doesn't revolve around food. If you're going to be traveling and you don't have access to anything that's good, you're like, fine. Your body knows how to go and get it from your butt. you know, the
Right.
skinniest person in the world still has many, 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 many meals stored on their
Yes.
body in the form of fat, which is, to me, it just makes perfect sense that that's what our body wants to use because that's how we store it. That's,
Mm-hmm.
how it was designed. And
Yeah.
just that feeling of not being, just being friendly with your food and friendly with your body instead of at the mercy or, beating up on your body or being a slave to food and tethered to your kitchen, tethered to the cooler in your car. So,
Yeah. Well, I love that you said it. It's like I use this front brain, back brain analogy. Apparently I use a lot of analogies, but the front brain, back brain, which is just a theoretical, it's not any kind of neurobiology here, but um, in the front of your brain, like for 3 decades, most of the thing in the front of my brain was eating, exercising, getting leaner. How can I look better? How can I micromanage my body more? And that's why I said at the beginning that I have a lot of regret, because my 20s, my teens, 20s, and 30s, like the prime of my life was wasted with that in the front brain. Didn't have any fun. Uh, just I was so singularly fixated on that stuff. And feeding and remaining alive is back brain, lizard brain, survival mechanism stuff.
Mhm.
What should be up here is all the joy, experiential stuff, education, learning, growth, love, joy, passion, observations of the world around you. And for me personally, I have a ton of regret that I occupy the front of my mind with this stupid stuff that
Okay.
is truly.
So yeah, I'm gonna coach you through that real quick, Erin, because everything that you experienced up until now made you who you are, and who you are now is having a giant impact in the world. And
Mhm.
that wasn't wasted. It absolutely wasn't wasted. Your joy and passion moving forward are going to be magnified as a result of being able to look back and compare to those other
Yes.
times. And we thank you. And we thank 25-year-old Erin for everything that she went through in order to be such a great teacher to us. So, yeah, don't waste your time with regrets.
Oh, thank you for that. That's a good point. And I have to remind myself I'm going to live to be 120, so I still
It's
have like 80 years ahead of me. So I'm good. I'm
exactly. And
still a child.
and if you had not had brought that intensity to all of those wrong things, then what if you just lived out your whole life being mediocre? Now you're just as intense and passionate in the other direction. I just don't think you could have ever been mediocre and just kind of coasted along. That's just not who you are.
Oh,
So you have lots and lots of years to bring all of this
yeah,
passion to all of us.
yeah.
All right.
But
So what? Go
oh,
ahead.
I was going to say that you articulated well when you described how you can go through your life without overly thinking about what to eat or when to eat or why to eat. And you used a good example of like if you're traveling or you don't have access to your perfect kitchen of food, that's okay because your body will take care of it. So like I think that's really interesting to people who are very busy. If you
Mhm.
can imagine, like if you have a work schedule that's very busy, you're in meetings all day, so you're like, oh, I don't have time to eat well, or I do a lot of traveling back when that was a thing that we could do for work, and it's like if you teach your body to tap its own stored fuel, and to your point, even a lean person has tens of thousands of calories stored on their body in
Mhm.
fat, then it's like you don't even really have to eat sometimes. This is where the whole fasting and ketosis stuff comes in, kind of next level metabolic stuff.
Mhm.
Like the ability to be able to just kind of ignore hunger if you have to is cool.
Right.
The ability to tap ketones in the period of food scarcity and have your body and brain run completely cleanly and effortlessly and perfectly healthily, by the way, on ketones and fat,
Mhm.
means that you don't have to have your cooler full of Tupperware containers with you for where you go. You can have, and we evolved to thrive in periods of food scarcity, and that's kind of a neat kind of a neat tool to have in your toolkit. And another neat tool to have in your toolkit, and I love that you touched on this, is that our body can store fat. Like, here's a reframe for you. How amazing is that? Oh my God, our body is designed to infinitely store fuel on it. That's amazing. So that fat that we all hate, it's actually such a
It
miraculous
is.
adaptation
It
of the
is.
human body.
Yeah.
Like, it's amazing.
Another phrase just popped into my mind that I want you to explain and expound upon is metabolic flexibility, meaning that if your body can burn sugar, it can burn carbs, it can burn fat, it can burn protein, it can burn ketones, it can fluidly
Mm.
go back and forth among those. And that so I guess that so can you say it better? Say it more.
You said it great, but one thing that I think, one of the interesting things about metabolic flexibility, we're hearing people talk about this a lot. It's kind of a trending topic, and I think it's awesome. But that's the whole idea is like, your body knows how to use a lot of different fuels. There's a lot of fuels available to us. There's all the fuel that we eat on our plate. So there's the carbohydrate, the fat, and the protein that's on our plate. The body can mobilize any of those into fuel, any of them. Carbohydrate being preferential, that doesn't mean better, it's just faster. Then we have all the stored fuel. So we have glycogen. This is stored glucose in our muscles and in our liver. There's a few, maybe I think 2,000 calories worth of glycogen in the body. If the body needs some fast fuel, it can just liberate that. If the body can run on slow fuel, depending on what kind of activity you're doing, that's where the body decides what kind of fuel it needs. Like, oh, we need some fast fuel, we're going to move glycogen, or oh, we can do slow fuel, we're going to convert protein to glucose via gluconeogenesis, or we're going to burn fat and ketones. Ketones are a byproduct of mobilizing fat. So we have our free fuel, which is the stuff we've eaten. We have our stored fuel, which is stuff that's stuck on our body. But here's the deal. One thing that I think is really important, maybe this is maybe too nuanced, but we talk about having everything in and on us could be mobilized into fuel, basically. And so one thing that we hear a lot in sort of more deprivation or diet culture-y kind of language is that if you get into starvation mode, your body will catabolize muscle because it can convert protein to glucose, right? We don't want to lose muscle. Muscle is incredibly expensive, important. The last thing the body wants to do is mobilize muscle and break down muscle. In a metabolically inflexible body, that might happen. The body will say, this animal's not eating carbohydrates. We're going to just go burn down some muscle and convert it to sugar. But in a metabolically flexible body, that's like the last case scenario. The body will go through free fuel, it'll go through glycogen, it'll go through fatty acids, it'll go through ketones, it'll go through all of these things before it's like, there's nothing left, we're going to go to muscle. And that's like if you're literally starving on a deserted island. That's one of the really amazing things about a metabolic flexibility approach is it's muscle sparing. It does not catabolize muscle. And a lot of my clients have said that to me. They say, Erin, on your fat loss program, I lost weight, and I've lost weight before, but my body looks different than it ever did before. And for me, that's because we went on a really meticulous seek and destroy mission for like stored fat, the bad fat, like the subcutaneous, the visceral fat as well, right? Mm-hmm. And we spared muscle. We spared muscle, so you still have all your muscle. You know, your bone density is still good. Even for my female clients, they'll say my boobs didn't go away. And it's like that's because that's essential fat. We didn't target the essential fat. We targeted the extra fat. So like we're losing it from our midsection where we don't want it. We don't want it around our abdomen. We're losing it from, you know, your armpit fat and your bra fat or whatever. And it's really targeted, but it's sparing. It's sparing all the stuff that we want to keep. All that essential fat that women need. Sorry, ladies, we need some fat on our body. It's sparing muscle for sure because muscle is gold. So it's a really interesting metabolic flexibility. Metabolic flexibility has so many wins. One of them is your body is always able to tap fuel. You don't have to micromanage it. The other is that it spares the tissue that you want to keep. There's a lot of benefits to it. It's pretty cool.
Well, as I told you, we could talk forever and ever and ever, and you're like my favorite person to talk to about these things. But I want to make sure that we don't forget to talk about your favorite subject of sleep. Oh. And I am also a sleep geek, a sleep nerd, and I just really, you know, I'm going to be 55 next month, and so I have the hormone changes and, you know, the hot flashes and the sleep and whenever my sleep first started to get disrupted, I'm just like, this is like so important to me. It's not acceptable. So I'm doing and solving for sleep in every way possible. But explain from your more educated and scientific viewpoint why sleep is the second most important part of our health next to food.
Well, it is the second most important thing after food for me. So if I had a list of what I thought was important, it would be food, it'd be sleep. There'd be something like relaxing and rest and play and movement. And then like exercise would be way down the list, which is a real paradigm shift for me and for a lot of people. But so I think for me, the reason why sleep is second is there's many reasons. First of all, we just know at a scientific level at this time, there's an enormous body of research that suggests that an underslept body is just incapable of being of achieving that baseline homeostatic level of health that's our birthright. So if we don't have that baseline homeostatic level of health, we can't have metabolic health. Like this homeostatic is the foundation, and we layer metabolic health over top. But if you don't have this part, any aspect of wellness is not going to work for you. And so if you can imagine somebody who's more into like performance, which I'm not into, but like maybe athletic performance, same thing. If you don't have this foundational baseline, your performance is going to suffer. Whatever you're layering over top, fertility, whatever it might be, right? Healing from autoimmunity. This is still your foundation, and sleep impacts this foundation. We can't have it without restful sleep. The other part that I like about sleep is that it is beautiful. It's like we're resting the body, we're repairing the body, we're recovering the body. The body is going through all its cleaning processes and processing our thoughts and processing nutrients, and it's part of like wellness that, at least from my perspective in the fitness industry, is overlooked. In the fitness industry, we're always focused on doing the workout, crushing, hustling, get it, go, crush your goals. And we're never focused on the flip side of that, which is, and then just like, you have to let it all assimilate by resting and sleeping. So there's something like spiritually important there, like connecting to the gentleness of sleep and the necessity of that gentleness, that it's like the sympathetic parasympathetic nervous system. We're always so on. We're always just so on. It's such a hustle culture that we forget that our sympathetic nervous system can't function unless we flip to the parasympathetic once in a while. We have to have this sort of like toggling, right? And that's one of the reasons why I love sleep. I mean, we know biochemically, biologically, it's important. There's an enormous body of research, but also it's spiritually important, just to quieten. So
yeah, from a spiritual standpoint, your momentum, your resistance stops. You get to start fresh every morning. But now let me ask this: do different people require different amounts of sleep? Like you said, in our culture, there's so many people that are so proud that, oh, I only sleep 4 hours a night. I'm like, yeah. So are there people who can do just as well with 4 hours of sleep, or is that just a cultural thing?
There probably is. I would say, if I was putting on my realistic hat, let's be realistic, probably. There's a lot of bio-individuality out there, and who knows. But what I've read is that most humans are designed to have about 8 hours of sleep. This goes back to circadian biology, which I kind of started talking about. Like, we are attuned to the rising and setting of the sun. Now, depending on where you live in terms of, whatever hemisphere you're in, like, for example, where I live, we have like 15 hours of daylight and whatever, the 7 hours of dark. It's crazy. We have these very long summer days, and in the winter it's the complete opposite. But if you'd imagine, like, in a perfect ratio, we have about 12 hours a day, about 12 hours a night. That would be the most perfect, like, equatorial ratio. We kind of have to a little bit sort of fudge it a little bit for depending on where we live. But regardless of whether you think you need 8 hours or 4 hours or 12 hours, the body starts producing sleep chemicals after a certain number of wakefulness hours, and if you're paying attention to them, you might know, it's whether you're paying attention to them or not. I think a lot of people are like, I don't like to go to sleep, and I can't sleep until midnight, or I can't get to sleep before 1 in the morning. But they could if they were paying attention to these rhythms. We're just not paying attention to rhythms. We're paying attention to the TV. We're paying attention to our screens. We're not paying attention to our circadian rhythm. But the fact remains, like, when the sun comes up, it triggers the release of serotonin, which is the wakefulness hormone. And then a clock starts ticking. The circadian clock starts ticking. And then toward the end of the day, now the sun has moved across the sky and is kind of beginning to set. Maybe it's not going to set for several hours. But regardless, melatonin starts to rise. That's your sleeping hormone. And it just does. Now, if you provide inputs that shunt melatonin production, then yeah, you're going to stay awake really late. If you're eating late, if you're looking at blue screens, if whatever you're doing shunts your melatonin production, you're going to have a hard time going to sleep before midnight. And you're going to say, oh, I'm just the kind of person that only needs 6 hours of sleep. But your body was trying to get you to go to bed. You just shut it down. Our circadian rhythms are pretty consistent across the human animal. I guess, what are we, genus, species? What are we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Homeostasis sapiens? I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I wonder if there's a way to. I always wish that I could just like reset back to the beginning, take out the caffeine, take out the bad habits, take out the, you know, limiting beliefs, and then and just see what your body does. Yeah, I don't know where that came from, or that's not really a
Well,
question.
no, but I like the spirit behind it. It's like, well, I wish I could get back to nature. I wish I could pretend I was a little animal living in the wild, and what would my life be like if I was free of all the trappings that distract from my natural biochemical processes? And that would be amazing. I
I
think
get that actually. So I go to sleep when I want to go to sleep, which is usually between 9 and 10, and I wake up whenever I wake up, which is
right.
usually between. So I have actually done this for myself. I'm actually thinking of, like, you know, I have quite a few loved ones who are self-proclaimed night owls, and they just, you know, they'll sometimes stay up all night, and
Yeah.
these are not people who are in the greatest health. And you know, so again, I just like I want to convince people to honor their bodies and honor their health, and create an earth suit, create with your earth suit, and keep it around for a long time feeling good, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, we are, wow, it's 12:29. I can't believe it. We have gone a whole hour. Is there anything that you want to add that we didn't cover, that's just really really important?
We covered it all. We covered all my favorite things to talk about. But I guess if I was going to leave with a parting comment, it would be like, if anybody spent their life just, or the recent parts of their life, hating or disliking their body or being angry at their body, just understand your body is actually amazing. It's trying to protect you. It's doing what you're asking it to do. And if you'd like it, if you'd like to change the way your body is showing up in the world, then you get to change the inputs. You get to, like, that's your opportunity. It's empowering. You're in charge of that part. So I think just feel empowered by the fact that you're responsible for the inputs, and your body will respond to whatever you provide. So if you want something to change, you're gonna have to change something.
Yeah, you got to give it different input. Give it good food. Give it good water. Give it good thoughts. Give it
Yeah.
love. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to put the links to Erin's next reboot, which starts on September 1st, right?
Yeah.
That, and it's 30 days, right?
30 days. Yeah.
Sorry,
Lots can
30
happen
days.
in 30 days.
Yeah, and she is live with you every single day, and there's a new little step every day, and it's an awesome community, and it's an incredibly reasonable price to go
Yes.
and get an idea and get yourself started. And she's got her 8 weeks to simple program. She has one-on-one coaching. I'm going to provide all the links in the comments to wherever you're listening to this or watching this. Just look below and we'll provide links to all of this so that you can get to Erin. And thank you so much for being here with us. I'm just so grateful and honored to have gotten to spend this valuable time with you.
It was fun. Thank you so much.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to be back next week with more great guests. In the meantime, remember, happiness is a choice. You can always choose to be happy first. I'll see you next week.